Okay, let's see how to display custom error pages. So in this demonstration, in Home Controller, in the About action, I'm going to manually throw an exception to simulate a situation where we have an unhandled exception. Now build, back to the browser, and I'm going to navigate to Home/About. So we get the details about the exception and where it happened. This is great for us developers, but we don't want to display this in production. First of all, because this would freak out our users. And also, it would add our application at risk in terms of security, because a hacker can try various inputs into our application to get an idea of how we have written the code. They can also find the version of .NET we are using. So we're using .NET version 4, and with this, they can easily do a Google search to find the vulnerabilities in this version. To solve this issue, in web.config, under system.web, I'm going to add a new element, custom errors, and set the mode to on. With this, we'll always display friendly or custom error messages instead of the exception details. We can also set this to remote only, and this means custom or friendly error messages are only displayed to machines that are connected remotely. But if you're browsing our application locally, like in this case, as a developer, I'm browsing this locally, I want to see the error details. So this is a better setting. But in this video, I'm going to set this to on because I want to enforce custom error pages so you can see them. Save, back to the browser, refresh. So we get this custom error page, which is more user-friendly and it hides the exception details. But where is it coming from? Let me show you. In Solution Explorer, under Views, Shared, we have this file, error.cs.html. And this is basically what you saw in the browser. Now you can customize this any way you want. But who is serving this view? We don't have a controller for that. That's where one of our global action filters comes into the picture. In filter config, remember this attribute, handle error attribute. This filter is applied to all controllers and all actions. As I explained before, action filters can be executed before and or after an action. So this filter is executed after an action, and if there is an unhandled exception in that action, it will catch it and then render that custom view. So that's how the magic works. So this is how we display custom error pages for internal server errors, which happen when there is an exception in our application. But there is another kind of HTTP error that we need to handle explicitly, and that's 404 errors, which indicate a given resource is not found on the server. So let's see a few examples of the 404 error. First, I'm going to navigate to a non-existing action, like home/about2. Remember the look and feel of this page. This page is coming from ASP.NET Framework, and we're getting this because ASP.NET cannot find an action that matches this URL pattern. Now, let's look at another example. In Customers Controller, this is how we implemented our edit action. So if customer is null, we return HTTP not found. This helper method simply sets the status code of the response to 404. Now let's take a look at the result. So we go to customers/edit and provide an invalid ID. Note the look and feel of this error page. This is different from the previous one, right? Now this one is coming from IIS. So when the status code of the response is set to 404, IIS will generate this error page. Now let's take a look at the third example. I want to access a static resource, like image.gif. Again, we see the same IIS error page. But what happened to our custom error page? The custom error page, as I explained, is only rendered when there is an exception in our application. So the handle error attribute catches the exception and renders the view. But when we access a static resource like image.gif, there is no exception. In fact, this request didn't even make it to ASP.NET Framework. It hits IIS first, and IIS can tell from the URL pattern that this is a static resource, so it will not hand it off to ASP.NET. The same thing happens when we return HTTP not found. Again, there is no exception in our application. This method just sets the status code to 404, and again, the rest of the story is handled by IIS. So handle error attribute does not work in this case. And for this kind of error, we need a bit more configuration. Back in web.config, inside custom errors, I'm going to add a child element. Error, status code, 404. We want to redirect the user to this file. So in case you don't know, this tilde character represents the root of the site. So with this, we're telling MVC framework that if it encounters a 404 error, it should redirect the user to this page. Now you might be curious, why are we redirecting to a static page instead of an action like this? Error not found. What's the difference? The difference is, if something else happens in our MVC application, I'm talking about an error, troubleshooting that gets more complicated. So in these situations, when there is a 404 error, it's best to get out of the ASP.NET Zone and serve a static file. Also, this makes deployment easier. So if you want to change this static file, we can deploy it individually. We don't have to compile and redeploy the entire application. So I'm going to create this file. In the project root, add HTML page 404.html. I'm going to keep it very simple and just add a heading, not found. Back to the browser. I'm going to go to a non-existing action. So home/about2. Okay, look, now we see our custom error page. What if we hit a static resource, image.gif? What do you think is going to happen? Well, as I explained before, because this is a static resource, this request will not make it to ASP.NET Runtime. So it's served by IIS directly. And that's why we get this error page, which is again a standard IIS error page. Now to change this, we need to supply a bit more configuration. So back in web.config, we scroll down, and inside system.webserver, we can add configuration for IIS. So here I'm going to add the HTTP errors and set the mode, error mode, to custom. And that means we want to display custom error pages at all times, both for local and remote clients. If you want to display this only to remote clients, you can set this to detailed local only. But in this video, I'm going to set it to custom because I want you to see it. Now first, we need to remove the standard error page. So remove status code 404. And then we add another error page. Error, status code 404, path 404.html, and we set the response mode to file. This is very important. If you use any of the other settings, the status code will be changed from 404 to 200. So from the perspective of the clients, they don't get the actual 404 error. And this is bad for search engine optimization. So we set this to file, save, back to the browser. I've opened the Chrome Developer Tools in the Network tab, refresh the page. Look, we get our custom error page, and look at the requests. Status code of the response is 404. So this is what we want to return to our clients. All right, this is all about custom error pages. In the next lecture, I will show you how to log on handle exceptions in your applications.